I think those who achieve greatness tend to just fall in love with gradually. It's the Kobe Bryants who get up at 4 a.m. to work on literally dribbling skills, ball handling skills. It's the musician who 12 years of playing scales in order to become the greatest. And people don't see who you are in private, but I think that's where the battle is won or lost. And I think I've shared this with you before, Chris. My definition of success is when those who know me best respect me most.
What made you realize maybe in this season of life, you and Laura, now more than ever, that the sudden transformation is almost always about the fruit of long, silent obedience that really no one sees? How are you learning this right now, Mark? I'm eager to learn.
Well, Chris, I get about 1 day older every day.
Yeah.
And at my age and stage, this is not a book I would have written 10 or 20 years ago. We are about to hit a 30th anniversary of starting with a core group of 19 people and leading National Community Church for 3 decades. So, we started young enough, mid-20s, that, there's still some left, some fuel left in the tank, but I think it just felt like it's time for this book. I think people are wanting things to happen at the speed of light. I think we get distracted so quickly. I think a lot of people are aiming at 15 minutes of fame. And I really do. I think it's about playing the long game. It's about long vision, long obedience, long legacy. And so it just felt like, this is an inflection point for us. This is the moment to write this particular book.
Let me get under the hood of this. Quick distraction, 15 minutes of fame. How do we get, if I can use this word, discipled or catechized into that rhythm on the inside? In other words, do you think it is default wiring that we are distracted easily, or do you think we're built for, and we're going to get here in the conversation, Peterson, long obedience in the same direction? What do you think we're actually wired for?
Well, I think there's always a battle happening, Chris, and I would ask it this way: are you being conformed to the world around you, or are you being transformed by the Spirit of God within you? And you know what's interesting? My synapses fired, and I remembered this study, and I won't remember the specifics, but when you're in a city, you walk faster. And studies have been done that have shown that, like, the pace at which you even navigate a sidewalk, like in a New York City, you are walking faster than a smaller city or a suburb. And I think what happens is we kind of fall into this cultural moment where, like, we know everything that happens in real time, and it's time distortion. And so then we kind of lose perspective. We want twice what our parents got in half the time, I think is the way I would say it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this makes me ask, even, I just want to keep going down this rabbit hole, because your birthday and my birthday are 2 days apart.
Yeah.
And you've got more years experience than I do. You've been going at this longer than I have. And so I just wonder, for folks hanging out with us, they're like, yeah, Mark, I've read all your books and all that, but if I were sitting down with coffee, what would you say to someone in their late 30s, early 40s at your stage of life, saying, you guys, watch out for this, don't do this, put more emphasis on this? I just think it's interesting, considering our birthdays are like a week and a half away from the time we're recording.
Yeah. The first thing I might say is to alleviate pressure, because everybody feels like they're falling behind the bell curve. We feel like we need X number of followers or X amount of money in our bank account by this age or stage. Do you know Carl Jung said that life begins at 40? I just think viewing your 20s as, you shouldn't have it figured out. You shouldn't, like, I have a spiritual father who is now 83, but when he was 71, he did a life plan. And we kind of had a little fun with him. Here he is at 71 trying to figure out what he wants to do when he grows up, Chris. I think it's an approach to life where the hardest person to forgive is yourself. The hardest person to show grace to is yourself. So just relax for a minute. And then the other thing I would say is enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy every age and stage. And this is coming from a guy that in his early 20s described himself in one word as driven, who on the Enneagram is a 3 achiever. Come on, this book will come out November 4th, and I start a writing season November 5th working on the next.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be careful that we are about half present in the present. This is what studies show. And the danger with that then is you never really fully live your life. And Chris, if the average person is spending 2 hours and 24 minutes on social media, can I just call it like it is? It's a form of voyeurism. A lot of us are living through our favorite celebrity or online personality, and it's okay in moderation, but that's a lot of time to devote to other people's, shall we say, filtered content. And so part of where I go with this book is a challenge early on, like, quit living as if the purpose of life is to arrive safely at death. Go after a dream that's destined to fail without divine intervention. And then this one, live your life in a way that's worth telling stories about. Not other people's stories, your stories. And so I think there's a lot there to unpack. But we live in a very interesting cultural moment where it's a little bit of an alternate reality, because I don't think we were designed to know everything about everything in real time. I don't think we have that capacity. And then we get spread into so many different directions that we lose our focus.
I want to go to long obedience in the same direction, and it's amazing you highlight this, and I've been struck by that Peterson idea for years.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned voyeurism, and then you talked about alleviating pressure on ourselves. And then I want to connect this to long obedience in the same direction. I'm not sure if this fully connects. If we make the conscious decision to decouple ourselves from this drive to be voyeuristic and to live our lives half present in the present, as you said, and instead focus on being obedient to what the Lord has for us now, will that alleviate the pressure? I'm just trying to mind map this out right now in real time with you.
Yeah.
What does long obedience in the same direction require of us and then provide for us?
Yeah. And I Chris, what I love about our conversations is that you're a student of people, and you're a hack the habits kind of guy that hey, and an under the hood kind of guy. So there aren't any easy answers. And the first thing I would say is one of my rules of life, Oswald Chambers said, let God be as original with others as he was with you. So I'm a data point of one. I'm just one guy in one corner of the kingdom trying to love my wife, love my kids, pastor a church. So I certainly don't have all of this figured out. I would say, and it's interesting, it's not a direct answer to your question, but it's what pops into my mind, that delayed obedience is disobedience. So what I mean by that is sometimes we want to kind of defer doing the right thing, or we want God to give us the 25-year plan, but faith is taking the first step before God reveals the second step. So what I've learned is that anything that you're attempting to do, don't despise the day of small beginnings. That first step is going to be the hardest step, but that's where you need the 20 seconds of insane courage, to quote bought a zoo, a movie from about a decade ago. You need about 20 seconds of insane courage to kind of take that first step of faith and then begin the process of gradually, then suddenly.
Yeah, let's back out of this gradually, then suddenly. So delayed obedience is actually disobedience. If we don't delay disobedience, is that us saying, I'm going to commit myself to the process, the God who celebrates the process, the gradually? Like we are habituated by culture to say, I want it now, as you said, 15 minutes of fame. There's the suddenly.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to unwind this idea, Mark, of, because it would be easy for a lot of people to walk out of this conversation and hear, yep, delayed obedience is disobedience here. Okay, I'm gonna stick to the grind. I'm gonna work gradually. I want to alleviate pressure. But then, Mark, their life never changes. Like nothing actually changes after 45 minutes from now when this podcast episode is over. By tomorrow morning, everything's out the window. Like, how do we actually begin to turn the corner, Mark?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me back up the bus a little bit, because this book is a sequel to another book that we had a conversation about, that whose title I think is near.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
A little book called Win the Day. So, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery. Like, you have to win the day.
Whoa.
And I talk about how, like, really it's about, show me your habits, I'll show you your future. That you have to make and break the habits that will make or break you. So if you reverse engineer any success story, I think what you're going to find is almost like a insane commitment to disciplines, to basics, to, I don't care if we're talking about a musician who plays scales. Did you know, and it's fun, we just released a little short film on Pablo Casals, who has been called the greatest cellist to ever draw the bow. I mean,
wait, you guys did at the church?
Yeah. And
I gotta see
this
it.
is hot off the press. Like,
oh, wow.
literally today released it. So
wow.
we'll get you a link for
oh my gosh,
show notes, whatnot.
Yeah.
Pablo Casals is a great example.
Okay.
So he played for Queen Victoria in his 20s. He played for JFK at the White House in his 80s. He practiced, he found some Bach cello suites in a Barcelona music shop when he was 13 years old. Chris, he practiced those for 12 years in private before he ever played them in public. It's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
And then in his 90s, he was still practicing several hours a day. And when someone asked him why, he just smiled and said, because I think I'm improving. So it's so much of this comes down to, if you do it for extrinsic reasons, for fame or fortune, forget about it. Like, it's you aren't going to have the patience or the grit. You have to do it for intrinsic reasons. And part of that is just a genuine desire to become the best version of yourself. It's my utmost for his highest. It's leveraging my time, talent, and treasure. Potential is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. But then it comes back to daily decisions, daily disciplines, and really committing yourself to playing the long game with whatever it is that you're doing. Like, you are a brilliant interviewer. I don't want to make you too self-conscious, put you on the spot, but
that's really kind.
My hunch is your first interview wasn't as good as your 100th interview.
No, Mark, not a chance.
Like
right.
Everything you have to, like, a black belt is a white belt that never quit. So,
oh my gosh, Mark.
So what is it that you want to become great at? And even now, I mean, I've been communicating speaking and writing for decades, Chris, like I walked away from last weekend and I said to my wife, that was a single or a double. That was my B game. Like I evaluate every message after I preach it, because not in a I hope it's not in a perfectionist or ego driven or desire to just impress people. I don't think it's that. I really want to impact people's lives. I want to get better at what I do. And so in order to do that, you really have to commit yourself to just, it's the Michael Jordan love of the game clause that, as the greatest player on the planet, still wanted the ability to be able to play some pickup basketball whenever he felt like it.
That is like 3 minutes of absolute gold, folks. Mark, under the hood of this, I think, is a conversation about motivations and how the motivation of the heart really directs the needle, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, I remember 5 years ago at the height of COVID, I had this, I don't know, unsettledness, and I remember talking to the Lord about it, and I really had to actually reconcile with him. Why do I actually do this podcast? Why do I write books?
Yeah.
What I found was, and this isn't, I'm trying to not make this a generalization for people. What I found, Mark, is that when the motivation got purified, and I said, actually, I'm obsessed with learning how to ask good questions. I love asking questions.
Yes.
I actually want to use the 15, 18 years of pain of my life to help other people. What I found was the product got better.
Yes.
Is there a teaching principle for us in that? Because you've given us a lot, and I guess what I'm saying in my own life is the case study.
Yep.
When I got over myself, the product actually got better, and I couldn't have reached that place without the motivations being purified. I don't know what I'm saying, really.
Yep. No, I think those are deep waters. Hey, will you remind me? I want to double back to social anxiety. Just a moment. Here's what I discovered early on. I really wanted to speak at certain conferences and be on certain stages, Chris. And that itself was evidence that I wasn't ready for it, that I wanted it for the wrong reason. And I've had to really, so here's a thought. Whatever people do, like this idea of purifying motives is so critical. So before I preach, I have a little routine that I always hit one knee, and part of it is that I want to try to get my ego out of the way, and I say, Lord, help me help people. Like, this is not about me. This is about you communicating, and he's gonna speak through your history, your personality, even your sense of humor. So don't apologize for that. But you somehow have to. If I'm nervous, that to me is an indicator that my ego is talking. Back to that somehow I remembered social anxiety. So, 25 years ago, Chris, I felt this pressure in social settings to be the most interesting man in the world, like Jonathan Goldsmith. I wanted to, and I read 3,000 books before writing one, but so much of it was like, I don't know, there was an immaturity probably to it, that it was more about flaunting what I knew. And then I felt this social anxiety to be like interesting. And here's what happened. I have a spiritual father who is more curious about other people than anyone I've ever met, and loves hearing life stories, loves asking questions like, who left their fingerprints on your soul? And it rubbed off on me. And when I became more interested in other people and just asking questions and like, tell me your story. And I'm so curious, like, what was the genesis of that dream? Or, hey, what are those moments, if you could live them all over again? When were you most alive? Like, I've just become really interested in other people, and the social anxiety went away. And so I think there's something there that, we unfortunately, social media, there's a tendency to all of us try to amplify our voice, and it's about what we have to say. And the truth is, 80% of that content comes from 10% of the loudest voices. So there's a danger there. But I think be slow to speak, quick to listen, and this is biblical wisdom that we need
That's right.
right now.
So what does that say to us that we might not recognize about, or how we might misunderstand how the Lord actually forms us?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say there is what makes us think that we can become like Jesus without being betrayed by Judas, or denied by Peter, or tempted in the wilderness by the enemy, or mocked by Pharisees, or crucified by Roman soldiers. Like, we get so bent out of shape. We're so nervous about getting canceled. Meanwhile, in the first century, they're getting crucified. Like, reality check. I think Jesus learned obedience in part by the things he suffered. And so we don't love the wilderness, but right after that baptism, he does a disappearing act, and he constantly was withdrawing. And this is how he stayed centered. And so I think little things like, hey, when was the last time you did a silent retreat? Just 24 hours, tune out the voices, grab a Bible, a journal, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. I think those kinds of things are disciplines that are largely lacking. I mean, be still and know that I'm God. Psalm 46:10. That is not easy. I've had to be very proactive. So, whether it's a silent retreat, we schedule a study break, my wife and I, and we'll go to Colorado, we'll hike, and we'll read, and we'll talk over meals. And, I think just finding rhythms that help us pace ourselves a little bit better. Kind of funny. I just did a bike century, so 100-mile bike ride, and my son-in-law is half my age. He's in his 20s, and let's just say he didn't train the way that I trained, because and he doesn't need to. When you get my age, like, if you don't train, you are going to pull a hamstring around mile 27. But it was kind of funny. Like, we started out, and this is just a couple of weeks ago, and 14 miles in, the kid, I'll call him the kid, is just flying. He is literally, and internally, Chris, I'm like, oh, we won't make it to the finish line, not with this pace. And so I had to reel him back in, and then, and he felt it, the back 50. Felt the pain. And so I think, whether it's biking a century or living our lives at a sustainable pace, I think it's really hard to do. But you got to keep a Sabbath, for example. You got to find rhythms that make it sustainable.
We're talking about faithfulness and steadiness and perseverance and long obedience in the same direction. I think one of the hardest parts about long obedience is monotony. What's the spiritual danger of needing to feel something, quote, new in order to stay faithful?
Yeah. Wow. That's a pretty profound question. My mind goes in a couple of different directions. That if you keep a gratitude journal and you're really good at nuancing blessings, life will become less monotonous, shall we say. If you either take things for granted or you take them for gratitude. So I think there is a way that This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. His mercies are new every morning. Really treating every day as a
Mm-hmm.
gift from God. Uh, Now, having said that, playing basketball in college and even the writing discipline of just sitting down at a writing
Mm-hmm.
desk every day during a writing season, or
Mm-hmm.
leading a church for 29 years. Yeah, I can't tell you that you aren't going to hit
Mm-hmm.
writer's block, that you won't get into a slump. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even 33 years married, oh, it's a roller
Wow.
coaster, friends. Like,
Yes.
you're going to hit moments where, it's that vow that you made. It's
Yes.
going to keep you faithful. So I think those who achieve greatness tend to just fall in love with gradually. It's the Kobe Bryants who get up at 4 a.m. to work on literally dribbling skills, ball handling skills. It's the musician who 12 years of playing scales in order to become the greatest. And people don't see who you are in private, but I think that's where the battle is won or lost. And I think I've shared this with you before, Chris. My definition of success is when those who know me best respect me most, and that's my wife and my kids. So yeah, I love pastoring a church, I love writing books, but I don't think that's how success is measured. I want to be famous in my home. Hard to be famous in your home if you aren't home. And that means you have to really figure out boundaries and priorities and do the hard work of what really matters the most. Lots of people climbing the ladder of success only to discover it's leaning against the wrong
The
wall.
wrong mall. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Mark. How have all of those things that you just shared changed for you in the last even 5 years?
Mm,
Tightened up, maybe.
yeah. Well, I'll say this. We got married young, had kids young, so it's crazy. I have a grandson, and when you see a next generation, it does something. It gives you long vision, almost inherently or intuitively, that you realize that, yeah, we drink from wells we didn't dig. I need to dig wells that I won't drink from. And it stretches out that timeline, and it gives you a little different perspective. I'll put it in real time terms. So, it took 13 years to write a book, felt called at 22, didn't write a book till 35. Well, we've been pretty actively shopping a couple of movie scripts. Like, it's no secret that, and I think they're great scripts, but they've been out there for a couple of years, haven't gotten any funding. Um, 20 years ago, I probably would have been frustrated. Now, I don't lose a second of sleep. You know what I think, Chris? I think it'll happen when it's God's time. And I've just experienced it too many times. So, like, our first 5 years as a church, it took 5 years to grow from 19 people to 250 people. And then one day, uh, days when decades happen, August 12th, 2001, we somehow land on the front page of the Washington Post Sunday edition. And the church just kind of takes off from there, doubles in size the next year. And I used to say it must have been a slow news day. And then I really felt convicted. No, it wasn't a slow news day. It was God saying, it's time. It's my time. I'm gonna put you on the map. And but it was the 5 years of gradually that I think set up that suddenly moment.
So what happens if we circumvent the Lord's timing? And here's the phrase. I don't love the phrase, but it's all
Yeah.
I can think of. What happens when we try to manufacture our own breakthrough then?
Yeah. Well, there's a guy named Moses who at 40 really tried to expedite God's plan, but he was trying to do God's will the wrong way. And you know the story. He killed an Egyptian taskmaster, and that wasn't God's plan. That you don't do the will of God in a way that dishonors the heart of God. And so it ended up, what he thought was going to be a shortcut ended up being a 40-year delay. And that's true for most of us. I have tried to manufacture a miracle or two. I've tried to manipulate the situation, and it usually ends up short circuiting and ends up being a little bit longer because we tried to take the shortcut. So the good news there, though, Chris, is it's never too little, it's never too late. And so Moses thought he was put out to pasture. No, if you're going to lead the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness, you know what would be really good training? To be a shepherd of sheep in that very same wilderness for 40 years. You're going to learn where every watering hole is. You're going to learn weather patterns. You're going to learn how to navigate that desert terrain. And so I don't think Moses knew it, but God was working his plan in his life for those 40 years.
Are you at this stage, you and Laura, are you guys less driven to act hastily, maybe now at this season? In other words, you've got thousands of reps under your belt at this stage. Do you find, even in the last 5 or 7 years, do you find yourself less apt from a reflexive perspective to go, yep, I'm going to just take matters in my own hands with, you guys have just invested a ton of capital in the property. You've built a lot lately. There are tens of millions of dollars that you've had at stake. I mean, Mark, this is real time for you. Big dollars. Yeah. You could try to finagle stuff.
Yeah. I think that temptation is always there. But I'm 25 books in, and a few of those books have sold in the millions of copies. But like The Circle Maker, for example, it didn't come out of the gate very strong, Chris. Like the first year was remarkable. Really? I mean, it sold tens of thousands.
Yeah.
But it didn't hit 100,000 the first year. And so what I've learned is trust the long tail. Trust your backlist. Trust God's timing. Like, you never know the circumstances that are going to catapult a book into another place. So I just think, sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised by the early returns on a book, and sometimes I'm nonplussed. Like when you write a book called Gradually, Then Suddenly, in a sense, it took 4 months to write. Every book is a 4-month kind of process, but this one took 30 years. So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to perform. I have no clue. But I guess I'm less fazed by the quarterly earnings, by the latest reports, by even last week's numbers as a church, and I'm more cognizant that God is always writing a bigger story, and that's where I have confidence that He who began that good work will carry it to completion.
There are a ton of folks hanging out with us today, and I'm curious. You use the phrase "trust the long tail." For you, for me, it's writing, it's podcasting. For me, for you, it's pastoring a church. For anyone listening today, what does it take to trust the long tail, like from the inside out? What does it mean?
Well, let's just put it in financial terms. Saving $100 a month doesn't seem. It feels like more of a sacrifice in the short term than any kind of long-term gain. But if you do that for 40 years at a decent interest rate, compound interest is going to take over, and you're going to be pretty happy you did that. So I think we tend to Well, there's an entire chapter in the book about actual cost, opportunity cost, that we tend to focus on the actual cost. So this property, this city block, it cost 29.3 million to buy it, which took a huge amount of faith. I still can't believe someone, we are now debt free, which is
Mark,
unbelievable.
that's
Unbelievable.
unreal.
Listen,
Yeah.
Chris, the miracle's in the house. That's what we've
Oh
learned
my
over
gosh.
30 years. But when we bought it, I still
Yep.
can't believe someone gave us a $26 million mortgage. Like, that's
Right.
unbelievable. And so you could have looked at that actual cost and said, oh man, we could save 29.3 million. But the opportunity cost, I think, would have been greater. Do you know, like right now, we last year about 150 rentals because we have this incredible venue, and it revenue streamed close to $2 million for the kingdom. And so, like, if my math is right, you do that for 15 years, you paid for it. And over those 15 years, it appreciated in value, at least real estate on Capitol Hill, it'll be worth twice what we paid for it. So I think leaders need to think in terms of opportunity costs. And then I would go from financial to even parenting, those who might have kids. Well, when you have little kids, sometimes it feels like what difference does it make if I skip out on that little league game or miss that ballet recital? And I understand sometimes you have to count the cost both ways. But one of our mantras is family first. If I told you some of the things I skipped out on for a 5-minute ballet recital, you would kind of chuckle. But it was a priority. It was something that it was really, really important that I'm going to be there. I want to be present as a dad. Well, with parenting, like you have to play the long game. Like the jury's out forever. By the way, even with kids in their 20s, like you just never stop being a parent. The game changes.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
you
Yeah.
that's where you trust that what you did as a parent is going to pay dividends in the long road. And by the way, can I share one fun little story?
Anything you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
So one of our great regrets, Laura and I, if people ask us, what would you do differently? The one thing we automatically say is, man, we should have gotten counseling our first 2 years of marriage because, like, we were 22 and 20. We were so immature. We should have gotten counseling. But the problem is 30 years ago, it was a sign of weakness. Now I think it's seen as a sign of strength. So we regret not getting counseling. But I remember when Laura, who is a little bit more courageous of the two of us, went and finally got counseling about 10, 12 years after that. She said to the counselor, Chris, like, man, I'm just so scared that I'm going to mess up my kids, that my dysfunction is going to confer to the next generation, that they're going to, that they're going to need so much counseling because of my parenting. And I bet a lot of parents feel that way. And I love what her counselor said to her. She didn't even skip a beat. She said, "Well, then just give them my number," which I think is kind of funny. And what is really funny is she's still our counselor 20 years later, and we still lean in. So I think there are no perfect parents is what I'm getting at. You'll make some mistakes, but by the way, those mistakes are the greatest opportunity, because how are your kids going to learn to say sorry if they don't learn it from you?
It's interesting. I think about people's temperaments, and long obedience in the same direction actually is a little bit of a warm blanket to me, because I'm wired for routine. I don't like change, so I find comfort in stability. But, and there are folks just like me as well, but when I think about gradually then suddenly, when someone feels stuck, how do they actually discern whether they're being faithful or just avoiding risk under the guise of patience, and then calling it, yeah, I'm just being obedient, just being obedient? We're tricking ourselves. How do we know?
Yep. Yep. Well, I believe in the power of the power of mundanity, doing the right thing day in and day out. But Chris, if I was your life coach, what you said about 2 minutes ago, I would lean in and poke the bear a little bit, because routine is the key to spiritual growth. That we call them spiritual disciplines, but once the routine becomes routine, you actually have to change the routine. And it's one of my favorite concepts from physiology, the law of requisite variety, that if you go to the gym, work out the same way, same reps, same incline on the bench, whatnot, uh, you will eventually lose effectiveness because your muscles will adapt. So what you have to do is confuse your muscles by that requisite variety, so that it continues to break down and build up. I think this is true of life. Like, I think Jesus didn't do an orientation with his disciples. He did a disorientation. Six times he said, "You have heard that it was said," and he said, "But I tell you." And he said, "Love your
Oh,
enemies, pray for those who persecute you, bless those who
yeah.
curse you." So I feel like my job as a leader, great leaders confuse people, not unintentionally, not because their vision lacks clarity. They keep people on their toes. And so, like a great trainer at the gym, really what they're doing is just confusing your body so it breaks down and builds back up in a new way. And I think when it comes to leading, communicating, if you get too predictable, Chris, then you begin to lose. This is why I try to change translations of the Bible every year, because I don't want to get, like, I'll go from an NIV to a KJV to a NLT, because the slightly different languages kind of makes my synapses fire in different ways. So I think it's a healthy exercise, and you've heard me share this little equation before: change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective. So part of it is, sometimes I just need to get out of my routine, and that in itself will, help me ideate a little bit differently, might catalyze a little bit more creativity in me.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about the trainer and the breaking down of muscles and all that. How does that happen in our lives? In other words, is there an opportunity for us to value adversity when it comes our way? Because adversity breaks down and builds us up and trains us in a new way. In other words, when we endeavor to think about this concept of gradually, then suddenly, is there an opportunity to reframe suffering and adversity in that conversation?
Yeah.
Tell me
I,
more.
I hate the question and I hate the answer, because the truth is, and I write about this in the book a little bit, that often long vision is the result of long suffering. Like, I just historically, like, when I went to the University of Chicago, before I felt called to ministry, I really wanted to teach history. I love history. And if you study, biographies, and I'll pull out Abraham Lincoln. I just don't think he would have had the emotional fortitude um, to lead this country through a civil war if he had not endured the tragic death of his first love, a nervous breakdown, a failed business, failed election after election after election. I think, he once said, "I'm the most miserable man on earth." And such compassion for our 16th president, because it was not a yellow brick road. It was a hard existence, but I think that adversity prepared him and gave him the grit, the fortitude to lead this country through a very difficult time. So the good news in all of that, Chris, is that God is going to recycle your pain for someone else's gain. It's not for naught. I even look back on my life, and I mean, I don't want to turn this into a woe is me, but I mean, I had severe asthma for 40 years. I've had 6 knee surgeries, both knees, reconstructive surgery for torn ACLs. I spent 2 days on a respirator. I've got a scar all the way down the middle of my abdomen from ruptured intestines. I should have died. And then my wife has been through 2 bouts with cancer. So, but you know what? It's a poem that she read when she first was diagnosed that posed a question that changed our lives. And the question was this: what have you come to teach us? Which is a hard question to ask of cancer, but you have to take a learning posture. You have to have a growth mindset. And that really, Chris, is what's behind this GTS, this gradually then suddenly mindset. Like, just there's no finish line. You never arrive. Like, all you can do is keep learning the lessons, keep cultivating the character, and keep trying to maintain that integrity in the process. And at the end of the day, in fact, can I go? I want to loop all the way back, a little callback to Eugene Peterson, because he wrote this book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And do you know, I had the joy of being a part of a small gathering at Glen Erie Castle in Colorado when Eugene was 83 years old. And I remember a couple of things, Chris. I remember he had some health challenges. He had experienced the wear and tear of leadership like the rest of us, but he still had a smile on his face. He had the capacity to laugh. He still had a twinkle in his eye and a little bit of a skip in his step. And so I took note of that I want to have that kind of light spirit even at the end of my life. But then he shared a story that I'll never forget. There was a lake cabin that his dad built in 1947 in Montana. And he said one day he was watching a kingfisher, which, as the name suggests, is the very best bird at catching fish. And he said, I sat there and I counted the number of attempts. And Eugene Peterson said it took 37 tries for it to catch a fish. And he's the kingfisher. And then, Chris, there was this moment, like this pregnant pause, and he asked this pointed question: how many times have you tried? And it was like, yeah, reality check right here. And what I think is amazing is he walked the talk, because that first book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction, was rejected 17 times by publishers. One of those publishers, Chris, said it's irrelevant to the concerns of contemporary North Americans. Why? Because we want to get rich quick. We want the silver bullet. We want the shortcut. We want the cheat code. But I for one, am grateful that Eugene Peterson didn't give up after the 16th rejection. He would have gone to the grave with 30 books in him, and he would have gone to the grave with a message which has sold 20 million copies in him. And so I think those who are listening, who may be kind of on the brink of giving up or feel like it's too little too late, it's really not. This is the God who can say to a man 4 days dead, Lazarus, come forth. And so just a word of encouragement that, yeah, there are going to be some failed attempts, maybe 37. There are going to be some rejections, maybe 17. But you have to just keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Like, you got to keep playing the long game. And so, I guess I just hope that, as people read this book, it's a little shot of adrenaline, Chris, that I'm going to keep going another day. I'm going to keep believing. I'm going to keep trying. and then you leave the outcome, you leave the result up to God.
You talk about core convictions and non-negotiables. How do we in life, and I'm asking this selfishly, early 40s, like have dealt with some serious burnout and then now feeling like I'm getting my oxygen back. How do we identify what convictions are worth bleeding for?
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's going to take a wrestling match, because you have to figure out, like, do you remember Shammah? He was one of the mighty men. Now, I wrote a book about Benaiah, who chased the lion into a pit on the snowy lake and killed it. And so he's my fave. But Shammah is a close second. Like, when all of Israel was retreating, it says he took his stand in a lentil field. And so I think the question you're asking is, like, what battlefield am I called to die on? And so my wife and I, when our kids were young, you can't fight every battle. And we kept a little note card on the bathroom mirror that said, "Choose your battles wisely." And so some battles, I just don't think it's my battle to fight. Now, I'll Aaron and I'll hold up other people's arms to fight that battle. But then there are some things, Chris, that, yeah, I won't give up ground. I won't do it. It's almost like this Martin Luther moment where he's like, I can't recant. I can't do it in good conscience. Here I stand. I have to live according to my convictions. In his case, sola fide, by faith alone, sola gratia, by grace alone, sola scriptura, by scripture alone, solus Christus, by Christ alone, soli Deo gloria, to the glory of God alone. So I think kind of figuring out, this is where I stake my claim. And I don't know that that'll necessarily present itself even in your 20s or your 30s. Or I just think at some point you figure out, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And to compromise or lose courage is to actually compromise the next generation. So this is a bigger play. I think it's about making sure that, Chris, if I have to choose between political correctness and biblical correctness, I'll choose political correctness 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. And I'm a guy that, listen, we will not agree on every point of doctrine. We've disagreed on that stuff for 2,000 years. I think at the end of the day, where I won't give up ground, only one person lived a sinless life. Only one person paid the penalty for my sin on Calvary's cross. And only one person predicted his own resurrection and then pulled it off 3 days later. And so for me, it kind of boils down to Jesus. Like that's the non-negotiable. Yeah.
It's always a joy. Thanks for being here, Mark. Is there anything else today?
Man, I think that's a pretty good place to end, don't you?
Agreed. It's the perfect period on that sentence.
Hey, Chris, it's always a joy, brother.
It's such a joy. Great to see you, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.